Welcome to the Women Influencers in Business and CRE podcast. I am Veronica, CCIM, founder and CEO of Capital Stack Real Estate Group, a commercial real estate company serving the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Renee Savage, certified property manager and CCIM. Renee talked to me about how she started her career in a very male-dominated industry of property management, how she effected change by speaking up and standing out among the suits. She now currently serves as president of the international organization IREM, the Institute of Real Estate Management, and owns her own company, Savage CRE. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast. Well, good afternoon, Renee, and I believe it's good morning your time.
It is good morning. Good morning, Veronica. It's 10 a.m. here in California, in San Diego.
Oh, I just want to let you know I appreciate it so much, and you've taken the time to speak to me today, and also allowing the people that are tuning in to listen to your wonderful, wonderful story of being a successful woman in a very male-dominated industry. So, Renee, tell us a little bit about how you grew up, and if you want to talk about your career and how you got to where you are today, I would absolutely love to hear that.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for asking. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and ended up going to college in San Diego at the University of San Diego. And I was a business major, and I'm still in San Diego ever since. So it's a hard place to leave, that's for sure.
San Diego is beautiful. So I can just really appreciate the fact that you haven't left. So absolutely.
And so when I graduated from college, my first job was with a company that was in clothing manufacturing that I had an internship with. But within 8 months of that, the company went out of business. I had to kind of decide what was I going to do. And I went to the University of San Diego, had a career center. And I went to the career center, and I always joke, I went through the binders because we didn't have computers really then. I'm going to age myself. And I saw this posting for an assistant property manager. And I thought, oh, that looks kind of interesting. So I got my resume together and, dressed as professional as I thought I should dress at 23 years old, and walked into the office. The office was located in La Jolla.
I've visited La Jolla. Oh my gosh, how beautiful is that place? Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Beautiful location, yeah. And I walked in and dropped my resume off. And the company was Capital Growth Properties, Inc., and they were a full-service real estate company. So they did brokerage, leasing, and property management. And I thought, what are the chances that I'm even going to get an interview? Because I had zero experience. I'm, 23 years old, only 8 months out of college. And I was fortunate enough to get a call to come interview for the position, and was very surprised, but also very happy that I received an offer. And that was really my first professional job out of college, was as an assistant property manager.
Oh, how awesome is that? Do you continue to work for them for a long time?
I did. I am one of those rare people. I'm very loyal. I worked with Capital Growth Properties for 30 years. And yes,
how amazing. They are so lucky to have you, for sure.
I was lucky to have them too. So I started as an assistant property manager, and I hated it. Oh my gosh, it was like torture. And I was like, okay, I cannot do this. But within 3 months, they promoted me to property manager. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. I was handed a portfolio of properties, both residential and commercial, to manage. And then it became interesting because it was really a challenge, because I had no idea what I was doing. I really had to learn. I had a team of people I was supervising, and I really had to dive in and just, I hate to say fake it till you make it, but fake it a little bit, but also learn along the way, ask a lot of questions. I went to a lot of seminars to learn about property management. And so went through that. And then within 3 years of me joining the company, I was then promoted to director of property management.
Wow, so that within 3 years,
very quickly.
So you were 26 when you were director?
26 years old. And during that time, I got married, and then I had 2 kids before I was 29 years old. So I've got 2 great kids. They are 28 and 30 years old, both in San Diego. But they grew up with me in my career, and my career was part of their life too. And we had to merge. I had to merge career and family because I couldn't figure out how to do it separate.
Yeah,
So
that's
everyone
awesome.
was a part of it.
Most people in commercial real estate, they do that. Well, let me just rephrase that. Most women in commercial real estate or real estate in general actually do that. So, wow, that's awesome. Awesome to hear. Now, can I ask you, when you were learning and asking a lot of questions, was there a mentor that had some influence with you?
Veronica, it's so funny. I always used to hate that question, like, who's your mentor? And I didn't have a mentor. But what I've realized over the years is that I watched and listened to many, many people all the time. I watched people. I'm like, okay, that did not work so well, so don't do that. Oh, that worked really well. Do that. And so I would say there's just a whole slew of people, and in the environment I was in, where I worked, and through the industry, where I thought, oh, they're really good at that. How are they doing that? And so that I didn't have one particular person. I was just a watcher and an observer of others, and I took from them what I needed to professionally and personally grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you were hungry for learning. And so you got exactly what you were looking for. So that's amazing. So continue on. So you were still with your company.
Yes, but I'm going to wind back a little bit here because I want to talk a little bit about the environment I walked into when I became a professional. So this was in 1989. It was dominated by the suits, as all of us women would call them. You would go into industry events, and there's all these men in their suits. And then you walk in the office and all the men were in their suits. And so it was a very male dominant industry. It was a time when the fax machine and the pager was the new hot technology. Computers, were just kind of coming out, and we didn't have email. So we actually wrote letters and put them in the mail and sent them. So it was a very, looking back, it was what was normal, but it was this very simple, basic environment, really male dominated. And you found that most major roles in companies and in associations were held by men. Yeah. And they were the suits. The women also had to wear suits, but we also had to wear pantyhose. I mean, I hope no one ever had to wear pantyhose again in their life. That was not great. And it was a time too where you went to the office and you worked from 8 to 5. And so it was that old tradition. I'd say, like, to my kids, like, what you'd see on TV. It's not really that way anymore. And so I talked a little bit about my progression through the different positions in my professional career. I also did a lot of volunteering, which we can talk about a little bit later. But one thing that I realized that I had to do was I had to morph into their world. It was the world that I was in, and it was their world, but that did not mean to acquiesce to their world, and I had to figure out how to play the game in their world, how I wanted the game to play. So it was very unconscious. I was unconscious about what I was doing, but looking back, it was very strategic. And the good news was I really liked business. I really loved talking about business. So I could relate and have good conversations in that regard. One of my biggest challenges is I hate golf. I hated golf. I still hate golf. And it still is a big thing, but that was really a way to move yourself up from what I was hearing, but I wasn't willing. I was not willing to play a sport that was like pure torture to me. So,
I get that. I get that. My husband, who ran a fairly large engineering company in the Philippines, he used to play golf because that's how he connected and closed deals, right? I tried it. Oh my gosh, the torture. I can definitely relate.
Get that little ball into the hole that you cannot even see. I do not understand.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so you were doing what you needed to do to fit in.
Yes, and I learned fairly quickly kind of how to insert myself. You had to insert yourself. You had to give I gave my opinions. I challenged comments that were made, directions that the company might go. And I wasn't afraid to do that. And I think that's really important, even to this day, that we have to be ourselves. We have to question, we have to challenge, we have to ask questions, all in a respectful way, in the right way to be heard. And the president of the company, years later, he was like, "You are so stubborn." Okay, that's fair, because I was stubborn. If I thought something needed to go a direction, something needed to change, I really, unless there was something logical to change my mind, I really went in that direction. And one of the conversations we had, I got called into his office, and this was, was years and years ago. And he's like, what time, when does this office open? And I said, well, the doors open at 8 and they close at 5. He's like, well, when are your people working? And I said, when they want to. Property managers work 24 hours a day. And so it was important for me as a working mom to have flexibility. If I needed to go watch my kids play a sport or read in their class in kindergarten, I felt I deserved that right to do that. But I was happy to work at 9 o'clock at night and work it all together. So really kind of getting into their world, but also helping make change, during all those years of what women, and actually men now, when men with families, we all need that, but that wasn't the tradition then.
Right.
And Veronica, it was really interesting when I was thinking through this earlier today. I just kind of thought the world that I was in was normal, and because it was what was normal. But what I really am looking to see now is that a lot of the changes that have happened in our industry, in our companies, in my company that I was with for so long, were because of women who really did influence the direction of the company, who were willing to challenge why we were doing things, or why can't it be flexible?
Right.
And so, there's been a lot of impact to me.
That's amazing to hear, especially because staying with the same company for 30 years, obviously through the years, you have seen so much generational changes, so much policy changes, workplace changes. And it's interesting to me how you mentioned that women, at least in your company, helped sort of see the company through all of that. So that's fantastic. I wanted to ask you, so after 30 years of enjoying working with your company, and of course, revering the loyalty that you had for them and staying with them, you decided that it was time to pivot. So talk a little bit about that when you built your company.
Yeah, so I'm going to step back to step forward. So after about 30 years, I had decided that it was time to make a change. And I wasn't quite sure what that change was. So I talked to the owner and president of the company and said, I need to do something different. So at that point, we decided to sell the property management portion of the business. He didn't want to be in that piece of the business anymore if I was leaving. And he would stay in the brokerage and leasing side. That was his personal passion. So we ended up selling the property management portion of our organization to another company. And I moved over there for 3 years. I helped with the transition. All of our clients transitioned, all of our team. It went a lot of work, but it went beautifully. And then the company that had purchased us was a commercial management company. So we did commercial and residential. So we took the commercial piece of the company, put it into their company, and then we rebranded the residential. And we did all this during 2020, during the pandemic, which was a little bit crazy, but we did all that. And then at that point, once that was all done, I said, okay, my work here is done. So I decided it was the hardest decision of my life, not a question, to leave. And that was leaving my team. I had some people who had been with me for 20 something years.
Wow.
Leaving my clients, I had been with them, some of them for 30 years. It was a very, very difficult decision, but it was the right one for me because I had stopped growing and I needed to continue to professionally grow and learn And so I decided to take a little bit of time off, kind of a rewire time, not a retire time. And during that period, I formed Savage CRE, which is a consulting company that supports the property and asset management industry.
Wow.
And my goal with that really is to do the things that I love. And I love to solve problems. I love hard projects. I don't love doing the same thing over and over. And so that is what I've done. And it's been great. And it's challenging because you're walking into situations you're not familiar with and having to deliver whatever that particular client needs.
Well, congratulations. Not a lot of people actually would venture into their own business because of the many challenges that you, of course, had mentioned already. Now, you are currently the president of IREM, which is the Institute of Real Estate Management, and you are the global president. Is it global or national? Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they just call it the IREM president, but we are an international organization, and we have about 18,000 members throughout the world. We have international chapters also, which is incredibly interesting. And IREM, from my early career, has made a huge impact on me and my career. I think when you volunteer in a professional association and in any professional association, and you are part of committees and you chair committees and you go through their leadership tracks at the local level, and then if you go to the national level, you as an individual really grow as a leader because you're in a different business environment, you're dealing with different people. And you're faced with new challenges, and it's an incredible growth opportunity. So being the president now of IREM, some people go, wow, why would you spend all that time doing this? And, what about this and what about that? The professional and personal growth that I'm getting from this experience is it's incredible. And it's an honor to be able to serve such an amazing industry and organization. But there's a lot of self-challenges I've had to go through. I've had to travel to last year and this year I went to Japan, and we have a large chapter in Japan. So you're going in, you're learning about business, what we do, property management and asset management in another country, which is incredibly interesting. But then you're also walking into an environment that is a different culture. Yeah. So do you shake hands? Do you bow? Learning all those type of things. Presenting to a Japanese contingency with a translator is another challenging thing to learn how to do. And so it has been, I just say super cool. It's been a super cool experience. I'm 6.5 months through it, and both professionally and personally, I've grown from it.
Well, congratulations. And I'm sure that the organization of IREM is just so very blessed to have you as their leader. And for those who are listening in and is not aware of the setup of leadership in professional associations, it's a volunteer position. You don't get paid for it, and you deserve a raise, but the raise is zero. So, I'm not new to volunteer life, so I totally respect and understand all the things that you've just mentioned earlier. So I know we've touched a little bit on challenges, but was there one particular challenge that you overcame that's worth mentioning apart from those that we've already talked about?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest personal challenges that I've had in my career that I still work on, but I feel like I've overcome, is I'm an extreme introvert. And so I'm that person who would rather sit in the back of the room, in the corner, observe, not engage, not talk with people. And no matter what your profession is, you need to learn to engage with people. And my biggest challenge, I could talk business with people, but I didn't know how to chit chat with people. You're at a luncheon and you're like, oh, how's the weather? I mean, I didn't know how to do that. And I knew it was a huge disadvantage I had, that if I was going to move in further in my career and grow, I needed to learn to do this. And I had one industry friend who was an incredible he could work the room in such a beautiful way. And so I would ask him questions all the time. And one thing that I learned was he was interested in people. So I needed to understand that I need to be interested in people to be able to have conversations that aren't business related. But going through that process, I would sit with him at like a professional dinner, and he would talk to someone. He was talking to someone on his right. This is a true story. And she worked at a bank. And so he would chit chat and he'd come back. I said, well, what did you talk about? And he said, oh, we were talking about X. And I said, okay, well, what did you say? What did she say? What did you say? And he's like, what, are you kidding me? And I said, I need to understand how this works. And so I did this for a couple of years. And I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And it's something I've gotten much better at. It doesn't mean that I love walking into a room. No one likes walking into a room full of people they don't know.
Yeah.
I am much more comfortable doing that. And I'm much more comfortable having a conversation with people I don't know, because I am now interested in other people. I understood that was the key to chit-chatting.
And I'm sure you're interested in other people. It just didn't come naturally to you, right? And I say that because the very high analytical personalities like yourself and myself, and I'll be honest about that, I am high analytical. So like you, I'm also an introvert. And for people who are listening and perhaps have never really thought about whether they were introverts or extroverts, it's usually where you get your energy from, right? So I love to just be by myself, and I become so energized if I can just meditate or just be with myself and in my thoughts by myself and just analyze everything. But you're right. People connect with people, and people do business with people. And until we connect with them on the people level, they might not want to do business with you, right? So
Absolutely.
great. I'm so glad that we actually, it's so very common to both of us that this challenge that we had to overcome. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to talk a little bit about influence. And I know you're a national leader, international leader at that. And I'm sure that you've influenced a lot of people through your great leadership. I know that, let me tell you, when I met you, it was during an NAR meeting in Chicago. It was actually a happy hour in one of the meetings, and you spoke. And I was so impressed by what you were saying about the young professionals. And I believe that's really where your influence is probably most felt. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think as we go through life, we don't realize that we're influencing people. I mean, every day we're making an impact on people's lives, positive or negative. So we have to have some awareness. My passion has been in the next generation and talking with them and learning from them and helping them kind of build confidence to take the next step. And that's men and women. I mean, it's both of them. And so for many, many years, I'd say for the past 15 years, I've been engaged with college students in San Diego. And there was a period of time I would do a lot of just touch bases with them. Like their professors would say, you know what, you need to talk to Renee, you're lost, whatever it is. And we would talk and have, I would just ask them questions, and I could feel kind of where they maybe wanted to go. And I would help them go in a direction. And I think that's one impact that I've made. I think the other place where I don't want to say I've influenced people, but I had to really think about this is in my career, I was really big about hiring the person and not the experience. And we hired a lot of people at Capital Growth Properties without experience and trained. And I hear now people will thank me for the opportunity for giving them that first step. And I think that's an influence on people's life, is allowing people, giving people the first step. Because when I applied for my first job, I didn't have experience, and someone gave me a chance to prove myself. And I think we have to do that for other people. It takes a little bit more work when they're your team member, because you're coaching and training a lot more than if you hire someone with experience. but you typically, in my opinion, get a better result, and you help launch that individual further in life than maybe they would have gone.
Sure. And just like in the very beginning of our interview, we talked about mentorship. I think you have become a mentor, and the people that you've influenced, I'll say influenced, but actually impacted in their career are probably doing really great in either staying with property management or going into another career. And that's really where, like you said, we don't really think about how much we've influenced others. But as we step back and we're being asked that question, I think that we also have to tell ourselves that giving back or giving to others is just as important, right, as perhaps what we received in the past. So that's amazing. So let me ask you, for people who are listening to your episode, if you had one advice to give them, what would that be?
It would be to really understand how important your reputation is. There are a lot of smart people out there. There are a lot of people who can do good jobs. But your reputation is, I really believe, what gets you in the door everywhere. And so in order to build a positive reputation, I mean, it's you have to build a reputation, but it can go down in flames very quickly. I think it's just so important to build a reputation, and that is be a person of integrity, to always do what's right and put others before yourself. I think you need to treat people well and work on continuous self-improvement. Always try to get better and own it when you messed up. And all of those like key components build who you are publicly. It's who you are inside, but who you are publicly. And that is more valuable to me than a strong resume, is your reputation.
Wow, that's great advice, especially for women. And I know we do have everybody, hopefully, who will listen in to your episode and to the other episodes on this podcast. But that is amazing. I think that it goes for everybody. A lot of people forget that your reputation is really your biggest asset, right?
Absolutely.
Well, we have come to the moment where I'm going to hand over the mic to you, and you can ask me a question. So this is always so exciting for me because I don't really know what you're going to ask me. So go ahead, Renee.
Okay. Well, this is the fun part for me. Okay. So Veronica, what piece of advice would you give to female young professionals? And is it different than you would give to a mid or late career woman? And if so, why?
So the one piece of advice that I would give to women who are starting out their career, and by the way, my daughter is just heading on to university. She's my third daughter, but she still lives with us. So she's our baby. And she just completed her AA. She's decided to go to the University of Central Florida and perhaps move on to another university later on. But for her, for instance, we've had a lot of time talking about next moves, right? And I'll tell you the one piece of advice that you actually alluded to in this interview would be to be fearless. Be fearless. Don't think about the challenges so much as the solutions, right? Think about how you're going to solve and overcome those challenges as they come before you. Be fearless in your passion, be fearless with your dreams. And just like you did, you said you applied, you didn't know whether you were going to be accepted. And when you got there, you were like, oh, I don't even know what I'm doing here or how I'm going to get through, but you were fearless. And I think when you're growing a career or you're building a career, you just really need to be brave and bold. Now, in the middle of your career life, there could be instances where you would think, I really just need some new adventure, right? So maybe you're 10 years into your career and you decide that you want to change. My advice to you, be fearless. Same piece of advice. be fearless, because you're never too old to build a new dream. As a matter of fact, that was the quote from one of my earlier interviews, and that's a C.S. Lewis quote. And as you grow older, and perhaps you've done a few things, you've failed, you have to fail, because you're not going to succeed if you've never failed. For me, for instance, I'm 60 years old. I turned 60 in March. And by the way, I celebrated my 60th birthday in Japan. So I know how beautiful that country is just this year. And I built my company 2.5 years ago. And if you were in my shoes and I was on the other side of the table and you're asking me for one piece of advice at a later year of your career or even your life, be fearless. It's okay. It's okay to do something new. So that would be my answer to your question. And I appreciate that so much. And listen, Renee, thank you for allowing me to interview you for the sake of people who may be looking for some kind of direction or just any kind of wisdom from people like us who have so much to give, because we've been through a lot. Let me tell you, I'm sure you agree with that. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think it was so nice to just have a conversation with you to tell your story. So I look forward to launching this episode. And if you have some final words to give to our listeners, please go ahead and do so.
Well, I think I'm going to pick up what you said. Be fearless. I think that's perfect advice. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Veronica. And it's wonderful that you have put together this program for women and men to engage and watch and learn from.
Yes. Well, thank you. And enjoy that beautiful weather in San Diego.
I sure will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you soon.
That sounds great. Thanks, Veronica.
Thank you.